want to thank everybody for taking the time, especially Sky and Annette, in joining us today. So let's just begin with some introductions. I'll start and just kind of move around, pass it to Adele, who can pass it to anybody. I'm Asia Freeman, the Artistic Director of Bunnell Street Art Center. And because Bunnell stands on tribal land, on Indigenous land that's part of Ninilchik Village Tribe, something I didn't know growing up, I'm involved because I'm really interested in learning. You know, I'm a lifelong resident of this place, and yet I am learning something literally every day about this land and its people. And to me, it's an incredible opportunity. It's a real privilege to be a part of the learning and to be a part of an organization, Bunnell Street Art Center, whose mission is to strengthen the physical, social, and economic fiber of the community through the arts, to have a way through projects like public art and other forms of art to do this work of strengthening and connecting and interweaving all of us to build a stronger community. So I'm really excited to help support this process. And I will pass introductions on to Adele.
That was so beautiful, Asia. I'm Adele Person, and I'm the executive director here at Bunnell. And my role is often helping to facilitate projects and community efforts, whether led by artists or whether done in partnership with other organizations. I myself was born in Argentina, which is a very, very far away country, but kind of connected by the same mountains that come all the way up here to Alaska. And I immigrated to the United States when I was 4 or so and became an American actually in Alaska. And I'm also excited to learn and also find ways of telling the story forward. And this project, Tuyanitun, will be such a visual story that may be the culmination of all of these meetings and dialogues and conversations and learning processes, both for myself personally and then amongst our community and hopefully for future people, whether they live here or visit here or read about it sort of through the connections that we all share now in these digital spaces. Rika, may I pass it to you?
Thank you. Both of you gave such nice presentations. I don't know if I can meet that standard. I'm on the board of Bunnell and have been for quite a while. And I love the direction that Bunnell is going in reaching out and being really inclusive and searching more about our place and creative placemaking. And Argent is our board president, and he is somebody I'm fascinated with. I love how he thinks. And he I love this idea of wayfinding and also indigenizing, bringing back indigenous place names to this newly settled community. So I have a background in landscape architecture and in design. So I've just interjected myself into this and am partnering with it. And I've been working a little bit with Jan Keisner and Matt Steffy. I love this town so much. I love the visual aspect of the surroundings and in Homer. And I just want to help uplift the beautiful outdoor spaces that we have and work on Bishop's Beach Park and with Argent in just uplifting this space through this sculpture is giving us all a reason to look at this park and make it the special place that it is. And it's an honor to work with all of you and especially with Argent. So thank you.
Argent, would you like to introduce?
How about we pass the...
Sure. Hello, I'm Argent Kvasnikoff. I'm an artist. I kind of live in Ninilchik, and I'm involved with the Ninilchik Village Tribe quite a bit. They have facilitated quite a bit of my work in the past couple of years, and I'm very happy to be able to do this and to have the opportunity to spearhead this design. What I am really excited about doing is sort of redefining the knowledge system that is behind this project, because what is really hard to understand and convey to people is that our idea and version of what Indigenous knowledge is very specific to location, and it's also very specific to our kind of cultural evolution, which is very unique and different, and what we value and the knowledge that we have kept. Maybe it doesn't exist in books or is not taught in any formal way in any institution, but it's still there. And so what I want to do with this design and whole kind of project is bring all those things together of course, cultural history, but also a sense of belonging and community, because I think it's really important that we understand that we can't make landmarks and these grand gestures of culture without understanding the context of the place. And the context of the place includes what people think of it. There is no place without people. And so this has to be important for the people of the Homer area as well. And that's what I'm hoping my design conveys, and that's what has gone into it. And I'm very thankful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Can I invite Ivan to speak next? Welcome, Ivan.
Yeah, well, thank you. My name is Ivan Insleski, and I'm the executive director for the Ninilchik Traditional Council. It's an honor to be a part of this process. I work closely with Argent, obviously, and Argent's kind of a cultural ambassador, and with his artistic knowledge. I think it's really important for the tribe, obviously, to Indigenous land recognition. And, I think as, Argent mentioned, the kind of our cultural evolution with our tribe, because we have kind of a deep history that's not, so well documented, say in books and those kind of things, but to bring that cultural history and that integration with all of the people in the community. And I think what Argent, pointed out there, that sense of belonging, I think is important from Indigenous people's perspective, because sometimes, as the, cultures change, especially dramatically for our people and, the land and that kind of stuff, that it's really important to really, have our people feel like, that they belong, that they're recognized, and that they're appreciated, and that, the Indigenous people have taken care of the land for generations because it sustained their livelihoods, obviously. And so we're good stewards, and we all want to be good stewards and recognize, how important it is to not only to our people, but to the community in general, and to have a really collaborative effort to work with, Bunnell and the Homer City Council and everyone involved. That's what really makes, I think, the history of our people with Indigenous peoples is sometimes there's been consternation either from within or external forces. And what's really reassuring and heartfelt is when we can work together for a common purpose and really appreciate and value each other. That really makes our heart whole. So really appreciate, Argent working on this and bringing that cultural perspective of our people. The Tuyanitun is it's really going to be an awesome effort and endeavor moving forward to encapsulate all of our perspectives, but Argent's, really appreciative of his input and his value on this project. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Ivan. I'd like to invite Robert Archibald to speak next and to describe the role and position that you've had in this process and why it's interested you. Thanks, Robert, for being here.
Morning, Asia, everybody. So Robert Archibald, and just to let you know, I'm on the City Parks, Arts, Recreation, and Culture Commission, and I've been on that for quite a while, but I'm also on the State Park Advisory Board, so I, among other things. So when Asia brought this project forward with Argent, I saw, great value in this collaboration. I have been very interested in Bishop's Beach, and I don't think it gets its due in that area. And I see this as a wonderful project to enhance that area. But Asia, as you were talking this morning, it struck me that, the indigenous people that lived here do not get their just recognition, and it's actually not just for the citizens of Homer, it's for the citizens that come and visit down here. It's for the world to let them know that there were people here way before these people come down here to see Kachemak Bay and all its wonder. So I think this is a great project to bring forward to educate people, to make them realize what we have in Kachemak Bay and what the people that lived here early on did for this area. So it's a great project, and I look forward to being the spokesperson for the Parks, Arts, and Recreation and Culture Commission. I see Deb Lowney's not with us today, so yeah.
So you're representing. Thank you, Robert. And thanks for sharing your points. In all of it, it's so important to remember that the Indigenous people are still here. And so that's an amazing and incredible thing to learn about and celebrate through this process. Donna Aderhold on our City Council, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Asia, for inviting me. Yeah, I'm Donna Aderhold, and I think for the purposes of this group, I'm an elected official in the Homer City Council, and was asked to, participate to help champion this through City Council approval and help make it happen. So it feels like a small, very small role in everything that's happening, but I'm really happy to get to be a part of it, however small. I first heard of Argent when he donated a piece of art to the library and saw a photograph of it and couldn't wait to go to the library and see it after it was installed. And it's a gorgeous piece. And if you haven't seen it at the library, please go. It's the perfect place for this Indigenous alphabet to hang. And beautiful piece of work. And, in some of the work that I've been doing personally over the last number of years, really wanting to bring an Indigenous presence back into the Western culture. And, thinking of how Homer history is typically portrayed is really, it goes back to a swindler and homesteaders. And it's like before that, there was nothing here, which is not true. And so just bringing that presence back in and acknowledging who was here before us and who is still here, and just trying to bring those cultures back together. So yeah, I'm very happy to be a part of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you for the work that you're doing to support a more complex, nuanced story of this place, which is at the heart of this work. I wanted to welcome Matt Steffy to the room and invite Matt to share some comments on why it's been a value to be a part of this process to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Asia, very much. And everyone else for being here today. I am Matt Steffy, I'm the Superintendent of Parks for the City of Homer. And within Homer city limits on the southern tip of the peninsula, we are by far the largest landowner. And the majority of that land that the city manages falls under parks. And so I feel that I'm in a position to actually implement a lot of this stuff on the ground. And this is going to be hopefully just the beginning of more land acknowledgement inclusion in the work in our parks. It's Homer, so we've always had a lot of art in parks, which I love. And being able to tie in some cultural history and recognition into that art is a perfect fit. And I think parks are the perfect palette to apply that medium. I have a lot of interest in the cultural history. I was born and raised here on the Kenai Peninsula, both on the south side of the Ketchimack and up on the Central Peninsula, and grew up with an appreciation for the cultural history here. Both my parents worked with the university. I grew up with Alan Boris and his family being really good friends and kind of tied into a lot of the Native history here on the peninsula. And it's always interested me. One of my minors when I went to college was actually in anthropology. I studied quite a bit, had a lot of cultural interest in general. Yeah, so I think moving forward, we've talked a bit about how this art piece is kind of starting us down this train of taking art installations and tying them together with the other amenities within the park, as far as whether it's color schemes or textures or materials. And I look forward to having this piece be sort of the centerpiece, not sort of, for Bishop's Beach, but then influencing developments that come after it that would recognize, tie into, and appreciate this piece and its elements. And we're hoping to do a lot more of this in other parks. We've got a lot of ideas up at Baycrest for some land acknowledgement work on the signage and some of the orienting. I think in a lot of our wayfinding that we're talking about right now and streetscaping. With that plan just getting off the ground right now is a great time to make sure that we tie some land acknowledgement into that. And yeah, I'm just excited to be part of this team and to be able to listen to ideas. We work under the direction of the Parks, Arts, Recreation, and Culture Commission and the City Council through our administration. And there's a lot of good energy, good ideas, and happy to be working on this with you guys.
Thank you, Matt. Your receptive attitude and curiosity and passion for this work of cultural connections within the parks is invaluable. So really grateful for your presence and your expertise and support. I want to welcome Laura Haller from Islands and Ocean. Laura, I think this is the first time you've had the opportunity to join this conversation. And so I just want to welcome your observations at this point or any questions that you might have. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. My name is Laura Haller. I'm the Visitor Center Manager here for Islands and Ocean at the Alaska Maritime National Wildlife Refuge. And I've been here about 2 months now. I was here in 2019 as that acting manager while Cara had her baby, but I was able to come back. So I'm very excited for that. So I apologize, I have to jump in and out as my staff downstairs in the visitor center need help because we're short-staffed, but happy to be here. Definitely, I think our part of this is helping to share a lot of this information with the thousands of people that come to Homer. We get about 50,000 visitors a year in the visitor center here. So sharing the stories with a lot of those visitors, with a lot of them being from the lower 48. So just helping to share those stories with them and be part of the community.
Thank you, Laura. That point about sharing out and the critical kind of relationship we have as neighbors and partners in this work is one I truly appreciate you lifting up. I'm glad that you can be with us. We also have Brianna Lee, who's Brianna Allen, Benel's marketing lead, and she's really helping with the project publicity and rollout. I want to welcome Brianna Allen, and if you'd like to pop in here, you're invited, dear. See that you're hiding behind Lisa Wood's kiln right now. We'll just invite you to pop in when you might want to. We also have a couple guests from the community, and I'd love to welcome Skywalker Payne and Sky. If you have observations or questions at this point, I welcome them.
Thank you. No, I just really came to get more information about the project and just to give support to Argent. Thank you.
Thank you, Sky. It's an honor to have you with us. Annette Bellamy, I see that you've joined us as well, and I wanted to ask if you had any observations or questions that you might want to share at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Asia. I just, I want to be more informed about this project. I think it's fabulous, and it's about time we have more land recognition. So I've been in Homer since '73, and as been stated before, the Pratt's is an example of the portrayal of Homer and the communities here. And I think there was one exhibit done of photography that actually my brother did, and it was of images of the community, and he did capture parts of the indigenous community here and the history of that, along with homesteaders and the Russian community and, oh gosh, fishermen, et cetera, et cetera. But you know, it's a rich history that needs to be acknowledged. And I really welcome what Benel's doing with Argent here and educating us all. It's just fabulous. So any way I can participate, I'm excited to as well, but I just really want to be informed. So this is great to have the talk.
Thanks so much, Annette. It's great to have you with us. So our agenda today includes talking about how this project germinated and then how it has worked as a public process moving forward. And so what I'd like to do with Argent is talk about the germination of the idea and then the steps that we engaged in bringing it to Ninilchik Traditional Council. So Argent, would you be so kind as to share the inspiration for the idea and how it kind of, how it went from you forward through this process?
Sure. Well, a few years ago now, Benel approached me. Asia sat me down. We had a nice little conversation that they had been involved in this effort to bring some kind of placemaking, artistic placemaking that incorporates Indigenous perspectives and what that would look like, what that would constitute, and not even specifically in mind to do a sculpture necessarily. It could be kind of in any number of ways artistically. But what I was really inspired by, I was born in Homer originally, so it's very special for me to have that opportunity. And what I really like about the place where this project is intended, Bishop's Beach, is it's something that is used by people. And I thought, well, this needs to be done in a way that reflects that use and the spirit of the place. So my design, I initially came up with the visual aspects first, which was to incorporate a stone marker, which people historically used to mark trails, but do that in a way that kind of almost reflects the tree line. It's elevated, it's graduated to simulate one of the coastal spruces. That way it kind of harmonizes with that backdrop. But what I really spent a lot of time working on was figuring out, well, what makes this special? How is this important? I did not want to do something that was just there to look nice necessarily. Thought, well, it needs to mean something. So I spent a lot of time over the next year thinking about different ways to modify this kind of design, what it could include, how it could change. And what I realized is it was missing something that was connecting the past with the present, which is really important in when we communicate about our culture within our tribe, because like I said earlier, it's very unique and different, and we have many cultures within one. We now number in just over 1,000 people, which is our highest population since, well, recorded history, more or less, because of all of the dislocating and history of disease, pandemics, that kind of thing. But even within that fairly small number, there's this huge variety of perspectives and influencing cultures that people have. And so it was really important for me to figure out a way, how can I tie this all together? How can I make this go from past, present, and also into future to embrace the contemporary population? Because really what separates the Native community from the non-Native community in terms of the Ninilchik tribe is very little. We're not ghettoized or geographically isolated in any way like many tribal communities are within Alaska. We're very just generally mixed in, and because we're so mixed in and multiracial and multi-ethnic, it's almost like we're invisible in a way. So the benefit that we have from that is also our more or less weak point, because it not having that visibility is kind of a challenge, and that's what we always have to overcome. And Ivan could tell you hours about those feelings and all of those, how they manifest. But what I discovered, and I was inspired actually by where I live out Oilwell Road, a few miles, and I'm very close to the what they call the Ninilchik Airport, which is just a large gravel strip. And my neighbor, Frank Miller, who's kind of run this airport for a long time and flies little planes, and they are always buzzing overhead. I was inspired by mapping, and I realized, well, maybe I can make this related to mapping somehow. Like, how would people navigate if I don't know the history of navigation, if I don't know enough terminology? Because there is some historical terminology using Dena'ina language that exists, but not all that much, not in the refined way that we have nowadays, GPS and all kinds of wonderful technological trappings. But I managed to find that there was written history of this navigation system based around a certain high elevation in the middle of the peninsula, which is just east of me and north of Homer. And what really stuck out about that was knowing the history of kind of my family and our kind of internal oral history, was that the little mountain called the Ninilchik Dome was used as a reference point, both for inland trails, and also there's certain parts in the inlet where if you were in the inlet in a boat or something, that was what you could see in the distance. That was the highest point looking towards what's today east. And using these aeronautical charts, I was able to piece together that this oral history matched up with our family's oral history, like combining the two, but it also matched up with the geography maps that I had borrowed from my neighbor, the aeronautical maps, and that they all kind of triangulated into specifically pointing out the specific spots. So then I imagined, what if we had this directional system that was based on this, almost like a parallel universe of where instead of north, south, east, and west, we have this point is the center of this compass. And so I created and charted this whole system, and which I kind of use for a lot of different things now. But for this sculpture in particular, Tuyanitun Tuggeht, it represents the distance of the place, of where that place is in relation to this kind of imagined and oral history center point of navigation. And what I really enjoy about that is it's neither old nor new. It's somewhere in the middle. It's not a complete fabrication, but at the same time, it's not strictly something that's historical. It's both. And the use of this very contemporary looking, I want to mimic sea glass, is really representative of that contemporary use, because that's kind of the feel that I associate Homer with. And some of my best memories of Homer are just talking to people, like if people remember the shop Blackberry Bog and the wonderful owner Shawnee, I forget her last name, but just being around Homer and meeting those people and talking to them and getting to know them, that is that's kind of like my good memory. And so I wanted to use that material to be this piece. And to go back to the name, what Tuyanitun means is, it means trails from Tuyan. And so it's like a system that can be repeated kind of anywhere in the world, really. And Tuyan means high point, which would be a name for the Ninilchik Dome. But like I said before, that name, just like this whole system, is neither old nor new. It's very mixed. It's based on oral history, but it's also based on this contemporary mapping. So it's really about blending that and trying to show to people that culture is more than just specific time periods. It can be something that's transcendent in a way. And I want everybody to feel like they have some kind of ownership with this. And so as much as it is important to recognize who our people are and our history, it's also important that we understand and give ourselves permission to take ownership of this in some way. Like, I would love if people in the Homer area thought of it as much of a symbol of their culture as it is of ours. And that's what I'm hoping people can take away from that. So that's how the design came together. And I apologize, that was kind of a long explanation, but it is really detailed.
Yes, thank you, Argent. And there is so much to share, but that's a wonderful orientation. Ivan, I recall, coming with Argent to the Traditional Council and sharing, supporting Argent and sharing his proposal. And I wonder if you could talk about what that process looked like, from the perspective of the council, and how that was the first and important stage in moving forward with acknowledging tribal lands through this artwork.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think Argent obviously described the vision and the process, and just kind of to highlight a little bit of that. Our people and our culture is unique, as Argent says. There is a kind of some cultures in one and varying perspectives on that, and it's unlike some areas where you have a deep history as far as maybe written history or a total understanding. You have some people that view things more from a contemporary perspective with the Russian influence than the indigenous perspective from hundreds and thousands of years. So we have kind of this hodgepodge of perspectives and obviously different cultures too, because we have some Dena'ina Athabascan, some Supiaq, that kind of integration into our tribe and our area. So it's really kind of important. But one of the big things is that we've always tried to be, inclusive, and that is inclusive of perspectives, cultures, and the surrounding community. I think in Ninilchik we do a lot of our programs and services for everyone. We invite our youth programs, and so we really want to be open and representational of that community. But I think the most important thing too is that as you go through Indigenous land recognition, the part of the process is that we're used to as Indigenous people, kind of where the government comes in, tells us what they've done or what they're doing or what they like or they don't like. And over the years, when we went from, a process of termination to self-determination, where the government is, saying, hey, we want you to be self-supporting, self-sufficient, determine your own destiny. And then we kind of moved to this concept of thrivability, where we want our people to thrive, essentially thrive forever. And we got that support, because there was assimilation in the past, and now it's more of a, pushing to less assimilation, to, recognizing our culture and our people and that. So it was really important to, when you and Argent came to the council, obviously Argent is cultural ambassador and somebody that, can help really from an artistic point of view and from a, as he mentioned, the logical perspective behind this idea and the mapping and Tuyan and the high point, but to really kind of sit down and look at it, and then have an opportunity for our tribal leaders who are the elected council to really, see. And I know Argent, you had brought a kind of a draft penciled artistic display, and to really start to get us to think, and that's really what I think is the most important thing is that sometimes even at the leadership level, we don't quite, we think from a really contemporary point of view, and we always think, well, my grandmother did this, or, did this and used chicken wire to, catch fish in the river, but they don't think real long term. Long term, thousands of years ago, before any of these, materials and things were available, what that might look like. And so I like what, Argent talks about is that connectivity to the past and the present. And that's really something we strive at the council to really try and to incorporate when we think about these kind of things. How can we really look at representing and responding and appreciating our elders who have a very contemporary point of view from a long-term perspective, and also, put something like this together that may not be just really detailed, like from a historical perspective in a book or a magazine or, written. It's like some of it's kind of put together. And so anyway, that's really important, I think, for the council to hear those kind of things and to really be engaged. And it was a good opportunity for us to really kind of, stretch our minds and really think about how important this whole process is and Indigenous land recognition. And it instills pride, I think, as you sit down and as council members look at this and they think about, the original lands and Indigenous land recognition and things like this, it makes our people, but getting back to what we said earlier, that sense of belonging, instead of being, kind of a, just a visitor, it feels like we're part of something, like we trace our roots back to our land and culture and language, and it gives us that sense of belonging again. And so I think it instills pride and a determination for more, thrivability for our people, but also inclusiveness, that everyone involved is not, that can really appreciate and support this kind of, project and endeavor. So we can all be, good stewards and work collaboratively together to recognize our people. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Ivan. I appreciate, the point that you're making about how education and inclusivity work from within organizational participants and they spread out into community. It was an honor to come and, just stand behind Argent supporting his proposal and to witness the process of the tribe asking questions and then moving through a democratic process of authorizing support for this. And then our next stage was that we brought it to Park, Arts, Recreation, and Culture. And so, Robert, I wondered if we could come back to you and talk about what the process was like at the next stage of public engagement, which you were a part of as a body representing community members in Homer.
Thanks, Asia. So I'm trying to recollect. I've had a lot going on in this little thing between my ears lately, but we have a great crew of people in that commission right now. And when this was brought before the commission, I think we have a dynamic people in that commission that they could envision this. And when we were down at the beach, at Bishop's Beach, looking at the site and you know, and talking with you and Argent, and I think it was something that we could look forward to. You know, the commission is always very much behind art in our community. And so I, for one, am looking forward to this project coming forward and more of a dialogue with you. I think we've certainly got it off the ground. It's been before the city council, and you have great support from the commission.
Thank you, Robert. I think it's important for us to just share the stages of public engagement. And with the commission support, you know, there were good questions and good sharing about the process that brought it, you know, from the artist's mind and through a community supportive organization like Bunnell to the Ninilchik Traditional Council, and then to Parks, Art, Recreation and Culture Commission. And the next stage was that it went before City Council, right? So PARCAC recommended it as a resolution. And I wonder, Donna, if you could just talk a little bit about the resolution process, maybe share how that worked, and if there were questions or inspiration at that point you might like to share.
Yeah, what's interesting about how this process went, which was a little bit different from how it typically goes, you know, the Parks, Art, Recreation and Culture Commission is generally where that process starts. There's an application process. It's reviewed and vetted by that commission. And if they approve it, then it comes to City Council, which is essentially what happened with this resolution, except that I had the opportunity to be in on this discussion from a little bit earlier stage. So quite often the City Council is unaware that these art projects are in the works until something comes forward to us. But since, you know, Bunnell invited me to participate, I got to be on the ground at Bishop's Beach and be part of the conversation about, you know, what this piece would look like and where it might go, and the value of the piece. And so it was a great opportunity for me to be kind of paying attention while the process went through the commission, and then be able to sponsor the resolution that actually came before council. And there, you know, typically council, there isn't a whole lot of questions from council members because somebody is wanting to bring art into our community, and that's a positive thing. And I don't actually remember if there was a lot of dialogue at the council table about this particular piece, but I think I did get an opportunity to describe it and talk about its value and importance. And as I recall, it passed unanimously. So full support from council to have this piece of art in our community.
Thanks, Donna. I just brought up an image of the resolution, which I think is fascinating and exciting to read and share, and just really appreciate your championing that, that process. And so in the next stage, you know, we went to the city staff, and we've been meeting as a working group that's included you from the city and Robert Archibald from PARCAC. We have Matt Steffy, as he mentioned, the superintendent of parks, and Jan Kaiser, who's the director of public works, as well as Rika Mao, who is a citizen volunteer and landscape designer and architect. And we have Adele Person, who is, in addition to being Bunnell's executive director, she serves on the Economic Development Commission and specifically the Wayfinding Task Force. So there's all these wonderful layers of support and intersection, which I think of as being the public process. You know, in public art, there is the object, but really we build that, its deep rootedness and its anchoring in the community through these layers of public engagement. And so I'm really excited, that we're now at a stage of talking about how this project will be cited. So Matt, I wonder if we could come back to you, and if you might share with us the process from within the city, what that's looking like, and when you as a staff member, realized, okay, we have the traditional council support, we have the city support, and now we're moving forward in a process of design. And what is this design process that's going to sort of reshape and center Tuyanitun Tuggeht as its anchor in this beloved community park at Bishop's Beach?
Okay, certainly. So anytime you're dealing with this magnitude of an installation or adjustment to one of our parks, it always kind of brings us back to the drawing board and kind of reevaluating what the layout of that park is, how the different elements complement each other, what the function of that park is within our community, and what the aesthetics that we're looking for are. And so as part of this, we also, in the first walkthrough and decision-making phases, Marianne Applin with Islands and Oceans was along with us, and identifying the location that we wanted to put this installation actually involved the removal of an old element of the park that had aged out and needed to go. So I like the way that these kind of installations lend themselves to reevaluating things that maybe weren't necessarily part of the project to begin with, and maybe weren't on our radar to begin with. And so as part of that, it was looked at the installation. It's brought us into reconsidering a lot of other aspects of Bishop's Beach Park, how we could improve them. Everything from development of unused areas that could be utilized more with a little help, to issues like parking and how can we get more, and what does our footprint look like down there, and what kind of room do we have to expand and adapt the function of this park and the capacity of it to serve the community. As part of that, now me and Jan are working with Miss Rika to hopefully get together a master plan for Bishop's Beach. We have master plans for Jack Gist, which is being updated as well. We have master plans for Karen Hornaday Park, which is being updated as well. And Bishop's Beach is a really important park, and there's a lot going on there. From the turf to the connected boardwalk and trails to the pavilion to the beach access, of course, the only vehicular beach access year-round in the city of Homer. There really is enough going on there that we should have a master plan. Ideally, we should have a master plan for any of our facilities and or parks, because we should be doing things intentionally, not on a reactionary basis. I think a lot of the developments we've done over years, regardless of how good they were fairly isolated and reactionary responses to a need identified within the community or within the administration. Let's do this one thing here. And it's always better to have a comprehensive plan for an area or an activity, so that you can go back to that whenever interests, needs, or expressions come up and say, is this part of our plan? And if it's not, should it be now? And this is a good timing, kind of like indicated earlier with the wayfinding and streetscape study that we're getting into, to start incorporating the concept of land acknowledgement into our actual long-term planning, so that as opportunities to tie this in arise, we have the framework kind of in place and the logic models behind that. So yeah, that's what I'm kind of seeing on the ground is the application. It's great to just facilitate partnerships. That's what I think we do really well here in Homer. And yeah, and it's just kind of opened our eyes to Bishop's Beach a little bit more. And this is going to trigger a chain of a number of other minor adjustments to the park, I think, that'll get us on a good track to maximize the benefit to the community of Bishop's Beach.
Thank you, Matt. That's really helpful. And so as the project of Tuyanitun Tuggeht has invited, as you say, a kind of systemic look at land marking and land acknowledgement, I know that's really piqued the interest of Rika Mao, who's a landscape designer and an architect behind this project. And Rika, you provided some nice images of the park, the way it looks today. And I wonder if I could share those just through screen share. Maybe you could talk us through your perspective and process about how you envision supporting the project and its the revisions and enhancements to the park that are opportune with this project. So if you want to unmute, I'll just go ahead and share some pictures.
Thank you, Asia. Matt really explained a lot of really good things, and there's little that I can add to it, but I just want to point out this first image. I think Bunnell was spearheaded, just even the signage. This sign, I think, was spearheaded by creative placemaking through the, I forgot the name of the organization that we got that grant from, Art Place.
Art Place in America.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And so this is just coming into the park, and I took a number of pictures just to orient what a visitor's first impressions are coming into the park. And we're talking about reconfiguring the parking, the walking through to tie in the boardwalk from Islands and Ocean and people coming from that building, and the Beluga Slough, where there are a lot of bird watchers. There's just so many uses that this park has. It goes from bird viewing, beach walking, picnicking, gathering, meeting place, quietude, walking in the slough area. So I think my goal is to listen to everyone, and I was provided a great map that Matt provided for me, a large map plot plan of the park as it exists. And so it's a really good tool for me to look at view sheds and spaces. Jan and I talked, so we're talking about this space that we're looking at now is it's underutilized, and how can we use that as a central place for perhaps gathering or signage, informational, interpretive signs. And behind, you'll see a building, little thing kind of to the right of dead center. That's going to be behind those outhouses, which will be, or those will be moved, not outhouses, but porta potties. So the Tuyanitun will be located right about in that area. So it's this visual spot that I loved, that this spot was picked out by all of us that were there at that meeting, and there was some really great input, and we started off with a number of little spots, and we landed on that one being so perfect. So you can see that spot there. Okay, that boardwalk coming down from Islands and Ocean, and I don't think I sent you a photo of that, Asia. I didn't think about that, but Tuyanitun will be just behind the most left tree, but you'll be able to see it so well from the boardwalk. And so we wanted to just, we're thinking of just unifying the whole space. I met with the wayfinding group on, what day did we meet, Adele? Was that just like, maybe it was even yesterday or the day before? Like Robert, that organ between my ears is getting really cluttered, so I'm losing perspective of time and all of that. But I think right now I'm a listening board, listening to the different activities, the different usages, and I really want to work with Argent also in just making that very spot more integrated into the whole central visual part. But we're talking about locations of restrooms, because now there'll someday in the near foreseeable future, we're talking about water being piped to the park. Right now there is no water, so there are no flush toilets, and creating bathrooms and running water, and where will that be located, and where will parking be? And I'm not sure I can add much that I can think of, other than the sighting of the sculpture was just a really, really neat experience. And then for me, it's going to be cleaning up all the eclectic signs and trash barrels and everything that you just don't notice. And if we can somehow unify and simplify and direct activities and information much more easily. And if there are any questions, it's very nascent at this point, but we're even thinking about expanding the park possibly. There it is.
Well, thank you, Rika. I feel like our whole conversation is kind of a build up to what is this thing we're talking about, and everybody's probably trying to visualize it. So here is a photograph that Argent and I took. We brought the scale model down to the beach, didn't we? We got the, like, is it 15 inches tall, Argent, the scale model that has arrived from Midton Acrylics in Scotland. They're really excited to be doing the casting of this piece based on Argent's design. So we set it out in the landscape in a way that might be, you know, like the actual installation will be, but it will be 12 foot tall. What else might you say about it, Argent, to help people understand a little bit about the physical object and its placement?
Well, I think what I really wanted to do with this is the reason it's elevated is, of course, to show its prominence in some way. I did not want it to be low, like an actual stone marker, because then it would lose the importance of it as being some kind of beacon, because I'd like it for people to be able to see it at somewhat of a distance. And so that's why it's elevated, and it will be roughly, depending on how the foundation is built, it will be roughly anywhere from, I'd say, around 12 feet tall at its maximum height. And what is really cool about it is it does have this translucency, so it will play with the natural sunlight and it will cast shadows. And this material in particular is very strong. It's not actual glass. It is this compounded acrylic made with, I believe it's 70% recycled acrylic. I know Midton, they try very much to use material as much as they can. They draw a lot of reused material and recast items. And it will be actually fairly light for its size. The support is really there to kind of hold it all together centrifugally so that it's stable and does not wobble around. And it is meant very much like real stained glass to slowly pebble over time. It is very strong. It will withstand UV light, wind, erosion, but it will like slowly, slightly pebble over time, just slightly with the sand and the sea air. And so in the future, it may actually have more of that little bit of a slightly frosted look. And it's very much experimental also, because even Midton Acrylics, as experienced as they are installing these kinds of public works with this material in an outdoor setting is a fairly new and novel thing. The only thing I can compare it to is some particular works of Dale Chihuly's. And I was actually looking at some of his works and processes kind of in the preparation of deciding how to even get something like this made, because he has a proprietary material where he casts glass-like facsimiles of his works, and he makes these very grand looking outdoor, very Dale Chihuly outdoor sculptures that look like his works, but they're just out in the open and exposed to the elements. And I was really inspired by that, and that's what really kind of drove me to really persist about getting this kind of material, because it just seemed so impossible at first, because it was so hard to find anybody willing to tackle this. I received many inquiries about it from people wanting to do it in bronze, or there's even some kind of lacquered reclaimed wood, and it was just, it just did not have that feel. It seemed very plunked, like very like kind of beside the point. So I was really thrilled that this company actually responded to one of my requests and said, yes, not only will we do it, but we will kind of help design it, we'll help engineer it, we'll do all of that. So I'm just pleased about that. And it sits on this base, which is meant to be about bench height, because I'd like for people to be able to kind of sit around it in a way. And but that it can be prone to change depending on how the final plans for this master park design go. But yeah, this is kind of how it will look, and it has this really cool, each stone, if you want to call it, it's at a slightly different angle. So when you walk around it, it kind of has that undulating look where it changes shape depending on your perspective. And I would like to talk just a minute about what is on top. And that was something that I added, it was kind of the last thing I added to the design. And it is an acrylic piece that is the same color as a coastal agate that you would find here. And that is something that I'm very attached to conceptually, because it represents the literal, it represents the modern contemporary tribe and its sovereignty. And it's also the same shape that is on our new national flag, which I designed last year, which was kind of inspired by some of these ideas behind Indigenous recognition and landmarking and stuff. And that's something that I was very happy that became popular and accepted. And so I kind of put that on there as kind of a sign of really celebration for that idea, and also to have it be like this point on top that really kind of ties the whole thing together. And it's just the reminder of what this piece, what its core representation is, and that should be kind of who we are today. And so that's why that is there. And that's, I have not really written about that in particular in a particular place yet. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Argent. It's so exciting to envision the sculpture in the landscape with the aid of this scale model, and also to think about some of the ideas that link past and present and future through your thoughtful design. And I'll ask you to write more about it, because it does so much to help engage and inspire the public. So just as kind of finishing out our meeting today, I wanted to just share a couple things about the process. With the application to the National Endowment for the Arts, which we submitted last year on behalf of Bunnell to support Indigenous landmarking through Tuyanitun Tuggeht, we've recently learned that we have funding in the amount of $50,000 to support the fabrication of the sculpture, which is really very exciting, and with great congratulations to everybody who supported this, especially to Argent. It's a concept whose time I think has really come for a nation reckoning with long histories of exclusion, and the interest now, especially at the highest level, of telling a more truthful and nuanced story of who the people are that live in America, in the United States of America, and especially Alaska. So with this funding, one of the obligations is a match at all levels. And we've been working with the city to realize what a match can look like on the part of the contributed land, the site, the design, the site preparation and engineering that come to bear in the final installation of the sculpture. And that process maybe you could tell us a little bit more about it, Matt, but I understand that really from the inception of the design process, which Rika is beginning now, to the approval of that and the resources necessary to support the park redesign and renovation, we're looking at about a year from now, actually beginning some of the work in the ground that will lead to the installation of the sculpture by September of 2022.
Okay, yeah, certainly. So the city's role in this, and as far as the finances is primarily in-kind services, and so outlined pretty well there, Asia, was the idea that we have the city staff time, we have the time of the commission, the time of the council, we have the engineering and the site preparation and installation of the art piece once it arrives. There'll be some components to that. Site prep is going to kind of depend on what the final weight ends up being, and the size of the footprint, et cetera. So we got a couple different routes we may go, and we can take care of placement when it arrives into the park and how it's going to be anchored and all those kind of logistics. And then the overall planning process as well is a significant contribution to the project that will be in kind. And then the ongoing just maintenance of the site around it. Once it's in place, it may cause us to sort of reevaluate the immediate area around it. There's a lot of footpaths and stuff like that that may evolve. So there'll be some active management on the city's behalf for the site as it as the site itself adapts to the installation. So I think that kind of gets through most of the staff stuff on the ground. As far as the commission, once the city working with Rika and other resources has a proposed kind of master plan for development at Bishop's Beach Park, that will go to the Parks, Arts, Recreation, and Culture Advisory Commission to review, provide comment on, maybe some adjustments made at that point. Once they are happy with it, support it and send it on with a resolution of support to the city council, then city council will go through the same process as far as discussing the master plan and making any recommendations or suggestions they have. And then once that's adopted by the city and we're moving forward, then this installation will be the first part of a whole new way of thinking about Bishop's Beach as we move forward. We're fortunate that the timeline of this allows us to not rush and try and get this in the ground now. And since we've begun this conversation about the long-term development plans that our community have for this park, we have time to reflect on that and get ourselves in line and in order so that when we do this installation, we're doing it intentionally and we're doing it with eyes for the future, not just for the timeline of this project itself.
Thank you so much, Matt. Before I go to a little bit of information about how you can be involved through Bunnell's website, I just want to remind those present that we have a gathering where we can physically meet here at Bunnell, look at some of the images, scale model, etc., and walk down to the park and see where the site is and have some refreshments. And that's June 25th at 2 p.m. So I just want to be sure that you all have noted that date and will join us for that. And I will remind you with an invitation. So what I wanted to do next is just conclude with sharing out a little bit about how one can get involved in the process that has been beautifully designed by Bunnell's marketing lead, Brianna Allen. So here we are at Bunnell's website, and under what we do, we have a feature. So the website has all the things that are happening here at Bunnell, and it's just incredibly exciting. But at the top here, under what we do, we have a placemaking drop-down menu, and under that, you'll see that here you can find information about Tuyanitun Tuggeht. And when you go to that, you can see an image. And of course, we encourage you to share this with others and read the press release that talks about all the different partnerships that have supported the project to date. And what I really appreciate is how, with Adele's insight and Brianna's expertise, we've provided this button where folks can donate. It's just going to exist here as a receptacle to invite other donations. And I want to acknowledge the really generous support of the Ninilchik Traditional Council with a grant of $2,000 to help begin the public engagement process. And the way these funds will support the project are really quite important, because the NEA is fundamentally supporting the fabrication, right? And the city is supporting the in-kind installation. But think about the other things that are so important to this project, things like signage and acknowledgement of all the partnerships and support. There's landscaping and things that just all fit in to finally kind of finish and nest and polish this project so that it really communicates and engages the public. And so this donate feature is really an important way that anybody can be involved. There's more to that Brianna Allen has put here, like background on the marker design, the postings about like today's and previous talks that will be available to see in the city's resolution as well. So that just gives people a sense of, you know, how to share and communicate with others about this project, and we'll keep that updated. So for now, I think that we've covered the important notes that I had. Does anybody else have things that I've maybe neglected or forgotten, or questions that are important at this stage we might share? Okay.
I have one thing to say, and that is kind of about Asia and Bunnell in general, is they have, even before I was involved or on the board, just seeing them from a distance, I want people in the public and in the city and in the tribe to understand that this opportunity could not have happened without their kind of persistence in work. And I think a lot of credit goes to both Adele and Asia for organizing this and putting it together, because even though it's something that I've designed and we've all worked at building up, if it wasn't for their original inquiry and discussion and provoking and challenging of thoughts, this would not even be a thing. So I like for kind of, if everybody could, to thank them at some point as much as I do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Argent. And really, Adele and I are just thrilled to work with all of you and each other, to be at this stage and to have the time, as Matt said, the time that it really takes to do this thoughtfully and inclusively and thoroughly. So I just want to thank you again for making this time, and for those who've joined us from afar. And to keep the date of June 25th in mind at 2 o'clock, when we'll meet here at Bunnell and walk together, see the scale model, walk together to the beach and envision it there, and have a few refreshments. And really important to have members of the Ninilchik Traditional Council, some residents in Old Town, and representatives from the city, and all of you. And thank you. Hope to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
All right, well, we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you,
Thank
Donna. Okay.
Good job. You guys are rock stars.